I'll be with you in just a second. I'm responding to an audition request from an email I got on Friday afternoon. It was from an audio producer out of New York. Wanted to know if I could audition for a new book project come Monday morning. Now, although it's Saturday, I still want to respond within 24 hours because not only is that smart business, it's good etiquette. That way, if she checks her email over the weekend, she'll see my message, or come Monday morning, it'll be in her inbox. Okay. You know, with the advent of email and voicemail and Blackberries and texting and all that, you can be reached 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And especially in our business, auditions can happen at the drop of a hat. Oh, we need somebody for this project right away. The casting person gets on the line and they call the first 10 people they can think of, and if they happen to contact you, you need to respond to them in a timely fashion. What I want to go over today are basically some actors' etiquette about responding to a request for an audition. Okay? The first instance we'll talk about if you can make the audition and you are available for the project, just a couple of questions you might ask for the specific audition itself. The second scenario would be either if you can't make the audition, or if you have a conflict with the project, or you don't really want to do the project at all. And then finally, I want to talk about the ramifications of what happens if you just blow off the inquiry for the audition and don't return their email or don't return their phone call. So, let's get started. So scenario number one, you can make the audition and you are interested in the project. Okay, well the first thing is time is of the essence here, so you need to respond to this inquiry as quickly as possible. Oftentimes, especially with television, film, and radio, they'll be casting something that's going to work within a few days, and they may only be interested in seeing 10 actors for that part. So they're going to start calling actors, and the first 10 actors to get back to them will be the actors who make the list. And if you're actor number 11, you may just be out of luck. So it's always important, as soon as you get the inquiry, to check your calendar to see if you can get off for the audition. You know, you might have to take off from work or get a babysitter or something like that. Are you available for the project itself? Are there any conflicts? And if so, is it a minor conflict that would really, you know, you can work around, or something major that you might have to say, well, I can audition, but I've got this conflict in the middle of the project. But of course, as far as etiquette is concerned, you need to respond as quickly as possible and then ask the following questions. The first is, what are the times available? Just because they said, well, can you come in at 9, maybe you can be seen at 10:30, which might be a better time for you. Also, where is the physical audition itself? Just because Gus Johnson Casting is the person calling you in, they might not be auditioning at their studio. It might be on location, it might be at the production office of the film. And just because you're auditioning for Theater X, you may not be auditioning there either. They may have to rent a space somewhere else across town because they don't have space available within their theater. So always ask, where's the actual audition itself being held? Now, if for some reason the audition is held, say, at Gus Johnson Casting or at Theater X, and you happen to know those spaces well, ask them if they've decided what space there they're going to use. Is it going to be room A at Gus Johnson Casting, the little tiny room with no windows that's really cramped and small? Or is it going to be room B, the one with all those windows along the wall that sometimes gets distracting because it's so bright and sunny and noisy? Likewise at Theater X. Are you going to be able to audition on the main stage, or are they going to stick you in the black box, or are you going to be in a tiny rehearsal space? All those things, those bits of information are going to help you when you're staging your theater audition. Also, you need to find out who the director is, the producer, the playwright, or the screenwriter if it's new work. That way you can do your homework. You can find out what that producer or director or playwright has done previously, and that might help you make certain acting choices or choices with your wardrobe or information you want to put on your resume. Also, you need to ask, are there any kinds of special requirements for the audition, like props that I might need to handle? Do I have to sing even though it's for a film? You never know. It's always good to ask. And then finally, you also want to ask the name of a contact person and their phone number. Now this becomes all important if you're on, the highway or you're on the subway and suddenly you get stuck in traffic and you're going to be running late. That way you can call and let them know you are running late, and trust me, that's also a wonderful piece of etiquette to remember too. They like to be kept up to date on these things. They hate actors who show up late without having informed them why, or at least touched base with them during the day of the audition. So now let's go to scenario number 2, which I think is actually a little more tricky, which is when you have issues about the audition or the project, or whether or not you want to do the project at all. So scenario number 2 really revolves around the fact that you've got issues with the project. Either you can't make the audition, there's some problems about the project when it's working, or finally, you're not that excited about working on the project at all. So let's look at each one of those in turn. In the first instance, if you're unavailable for the audition, just tell them so. Say, I've got a conflict, I'm sorry, but always ask, will there be callbacks? Now, for a lot of projects, film, television, radio commercials, and so on, nope, they'll audition on a Monday and it'll work on a Thursday and that's that. Well, then you're out of luck. But many times they'll say, yes, this is the first round of auditions, we will be having callbacks, and if you really do want to be seen for the project, say, well, please keep me in mind, I'd love to have an opportunity to read for the show. Real life story, back in 2000, I got the call to come in twice to audition for a new TV show for the Home and Garden Television. And I couldn't make it either time. But both times I said, please keep me in mind. If you're having callbacks, I'd love to come in and read for it. Well, third time was the charm. I went in after the third time they called me, auditioned for the role, and I landed the show. The second scenario is when you might have a conflict for the project itself. Now, etiquette requires that you be as upfront as possible about these issues. You may really want to play Hamlet for that theater, or Lady Macbeth, or whatever, but if you really know that you have to work your day job every Thursday night during rehearsals, you need to be as upfront as possible about that. Or if on this particular weekend you're going to be involved in, your sister's wedding, or you're working on another project like a film or something, you need to let them know. There is nothing that will make a casting director or director angrier quicker than to go through the whole casting process, find the actor they really want, and then find out that actor wasn't upfront about their conflicts. And suddenly it becomes a real issue. So always be as upfront as possible. It's just good business practice, and it's proper etiquette. Now finally we come to a problem that happens often, where you might get a call from a theater that you do want to work at, but you're not really that enthused with the play. Or the casting office calls you for a role that you really don't want to do. You're really tired of playing a prostitute, and every time for every television show or movie they call you in for. How do you handle that? Well, as they say in politics, you should be diplomatic, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be truthful. What I mean by that is, you can tell them that as much as you'd love to be involved in the project, you're working on something else at this moment, right? You can't make the audition because, well, I'm sorry, I'm booked for another job, or during your project time, I've already committed myself to doing something, some other play or some other movie. You don't have to tell them, I don't want to play a prostitute anymore, or I don't want to do your play because you're only offering me $50. That's not good etiquette, and that will come back and bite you in the butt if you're not careful. So let's look at scenario number 3. What happens if you don't even bother to return the email or phone call about an audition for an upcoming project? My wife Shannon is an acting company member with the Maryland Shakespeare Festival, but she's also the education director, which means that she's partly responsible for casting the group of actors they're going to send out in the springtime when they do their Shakespeare in the Schools tour. She was telling me about the number of actors that she has contacted multiple times to try to see if they're available for the audition or this project, who have not responded at all to her emails or phone calls. So let's talk about what happens to actors who do that. Now, you might want to wonder, why would someone not even bother to return the phone call? There's a lot of reasons. Maybe they feel like the project is beneath them, or they're totally not interested. Maybe they don't understand the etiquette about responding to a project, even if they're not interested, that they think if I just don't respond to it, then they'll just leave me alone, it'll go away, they'll call me back later on when they've got something better. Actors who don't respond to inquiries about auditions get put on a list. You know what the name of that list is? The name is the list of actors we're not going to call in anymore. When you don't respond to an inquiry about an audition, they're either going to think you've stopped acting, moved out of town, been kidnapped by aliens, or are so lazy and disorganized that you can't be bothered to respond to their inquiry. Either way, you're going to end up on that list. And it's really hard to have a career as an actor if your name is on that list. I know that perhaps the phone call you get for an audition from that young upstart theater company where they can only pay you $25 a week to do their play seems like it's way beneath you. But let me tell you something. That same theater company may be in 4 or 5 years a booming theater in your town. Likewise, if a casting director is calling you in to read for a little independent movie that pays nothing by such and such a director, you don't know that in 5 or 10 years that director might be really chugging along and doing much bigger projects. The point is that if you just blow it off and don't even contact them and say, well, I'm sorry, I can't make the audition, or I have a conflict, or whatever, just not even extending that level of common courtesy, not showing that level of sophistication and understanding of etiquette, that's going to make a comment about you to them, about your lack of professionalism, your lack of maturity. And what does that say about how badly you want to be an actor? So remember, folks, always respond to an inquiry about an audition as soon as possible. As soon as you've checked your schedule to see, can you make the audition? Are you available for the project? Do you have to move any things around? Do you have any conflicts? Get all that information together as quickly as possible and respond through the email or call the casting office again and let them know. It's just common courtesy, right? It's also smart business. Break a leg at your next audition.